Welcome back. Picture a morning in the desert canyon of southern Jordan, somewhere around the year 50 of the Common Era. The sun has not yet reached the canyon floor, but already you can hear it. The click of camel hooves on packed stone, the murmur of traders haggling in half a dozen languages, the splash of water moving through channels carved directly into rock. A boy leads a string of camels loaded with sacks of frankincense down a narrow gorge barely wide enough for two animals to pass. He has made this walk 100 times. He has no idea that the city waiting for him at the end of this passage will one day be swallowed by sand and silence for nearly 1,000 years, only to be found again by a world that had forgotten it ever existed. Today, using AI reconstructions, archaeological surveys, and centuries of paintings and sketches made by travelers who stumbled upon these ruins, we are going to walk through that gorge together. Watch the city rise from a desert waystation into one of the wealthiest trading capitals on Earth, and then follow it into decline, abandonment, and rediscovery. And by the end, you will see exactly how these same stone facades look right now, in the present day, still standing in that same canyon in Jordan. Long before it was carved with towering facades and filled with fortunes in incense and silk, this place was little more than a seasonal camp. The Nabataeans, a nomadic Arab people who moved through the deserts of what is now Jordan and northern Arabia, are believed to have used this narrow canyon and its surrounding valley as a stopping point centuries before any permanent structure rose here. What drew them was not beauty, though the sandstone cliffs already glowed in shades of rose, ochre, and deep red at sunset. What drew them was water. Flash floods roared through this canyon during rare desert storms, and the Nabataeans learned, through generations of trial and error, how to capture and channel that water into cisterns carved deep into the rock. This single skill, water management in one of the driest regions on the planet, is what transformed a resting point for nomads into a fixed settlement. Early structures were modest. Tents, simple stone dwellings, small shrines cut into the rock face for local desert deities. The trade routes that passed nearby carried something the ancient world could not get enough of: frankincense and myrrh, harvested far to the south in Arabia, prized in temples and homes from Rome to India for their sweet, resinous smoke. The people camping in this canyon in its earliest days had no way of knowing that their control over a few desert water sources and a single trade route would eventually make them rulers of a kingdom whose wealth rivaled established empires. By the 1st century before the Common Era, this settlement had become something extraordinary. This was the height of it, the era we now call Petra, a name that simply means rock in Greek, though the Nabataeans likely called it something closer to Rakhmu. Picture the main thoroughfare, a wide colonnaded street lined with nearly 600 columns, running through the heart of the city, past temples, a marketplace, and public fountains, all fed by an engineered water system stretching for kilometers through the surrounding mountains. And then there is the facade that everyone recognizes even if they do not know the name of the city. A monument standing nearly 40 meters tall and about 25 meters wide, carved directly into a sheer sandstone cliff face, its columns and pediments and statues cut not built, chiseled downward from the top of the rock rather than stacked upward like a normal building. Historians and archaeologists generally believe the structure functioned as a royal tomb, likely for a Nabataean king, though its exact original purpose is still debated among scholars. Its pink and rose-colored stone would have caught the morning light in a way that made it seem almost to glow from within. But Petra was never a finished, static showpiece. Even at its peak, workers were still cutting new tombs into surrounding cliffs, still expanding the city's water channels, still repairing cisterns damaged by the very floods that made the city possible in the first place. Inscriptions found by archaeologists reveal ongoing disputes over property boundaries and construction permissions, evidence that this was a living, breathing, occasionally chaotic city rather than a monument frozen in perfect stone. At the civic and spiritual heart of Petra stood its great temple, a massive complex believed to have served both religious and administrative functions, along with smaller sanctuaries scattered throughout the city dedicated to Nabataean deities such as Dushra, a god associated with the mountains and often linked by later visitors to Dionysus, and Al-Uzza, a goddess connected to fertility and protection. Petra sat at a crossroads not just of trade but of culture, and you can see that layering in its architecture. Nabataean tomb facades borrow columns and pediments from Greek temples, decorative motifs echo Egyptian and Assyrian styles, and later, after Rome absorbed the kingdom in the year 106, Distinctly Roman elements such as a theater carved into the rock and a formal colonnaded street appear alongside older Nabataean structures. Governance in Petra combined royal authority with practical trade regulation. This was, after all, a kingdom built on taxing and protecting caravans, and the marketplaces near the city center functioned as much as centers of legal and economic administration as they did places of commerce. Ordinary life in Petra moved to the rhythm of the caravan trade. At its height, historians estimate the city may have held between 20,000 and 30,000 residents, though these figures remain debated. Streets would have smelled of camel dung, roasting meat, incense smoke drifting from shrines, and the mineral tang of water moving through stone channels. Wealthy merchants lived in homes with painted plaster walls and imported furniture, while laborers, water engineers, stonecutters, and camel drivers filled the lower tiers of a deeply stratified society. Graffiti and inscriptions carved by ordinary residents, prayers to local gods, names, simple boasts, have survived in tombs and along processional paths, giving us glimpses of individual voices rather than faceless statistics. Children would have grown up amid the constant noise of construction, since new tombs and structures were being carved into the cliffs almost continuously for generations. One structure captured the city's appetite for public life and spectacle. A theater carved directly out of the rose-colored rock, likely built or expanded during the Roman period, with seating for an estimated 4,000 to 8,000 spectators arranged in a curved sweep facing a stage backed by tomb facades that had been partially cut away to make room for the seating itself. This was not a building constructed from imported stone, it was excavated straight out of the mountainside, an engineering feat that required cutting away sections of earlier tombs to create the performance space. For a desert trading city, a theater of this scale was a powerful statement. Petra was not simply a stopover for merchants. It was a place with the wealth and sophistication to host public entertainment on a scale comparable to cities throughout the Roman world. For the city's elite, privilege took the form of elaborate private tombs and residences carved with extraordinary detail. One of the most striking is a structure now commonly called the palace tomb, a facade reaching several stories high, its upper levels blending Nabataean rock cutting with imported Hellenistic and Roman decorative styles, suggesting a family of enormous wealth and far-reaching cultural connections. Interior chambers in elite tombs and residences have revealed traces of painted ceilings, imported pottery, and luxury goods carried along the very trade routes that made Petra rich in the first place. Yet whatever comfort and permanence these families believed their carved stone monuments promised them, it would not be enough. Whatever was coming for Petra would not distinguish between a water carrier in the marketplace and a noble family resting in a painted tomb chamber. Petra's decline did not arrive as a single dramatic catastrophe, but as a series of turning points stretched across centuries. The first major blow came in the year 106, when the Roman Empire annexed the Nabataean kingdom, absorbing Petra into the province of Arabia Petraea. The city did not vanish immediately. It continued to function as an important regional center under Roman rule for generations. But the deeper wound came from shifting trade. As sea routes across the Red Sea and overland paths through Palmyra to the north grew more efficient, the overland caravan trade that had built Petra's fortune gradually dried up. Then, in the year 363, a massive earthquake struck the region, believed by modern seismologists to have measured somewhere in the range of magnitude 6.5 to 7, severely damaging Petra's water systems, temples, and residential structures. Many residents likely believed the earthquake to be divine punishment or simple bad fortune, unaware that the tectonic forces beneath the Arabian and African plates had produced a shift that would fracture cisterns and channels the city depended on for survival. A second severe earthquake in the year 551 caused further damage. Without its precise, carefully engineered water management system intact, and without the trade wealth that once justified constant reinvestment in that system, Petra's population began to shrink steadily rather than collapse all at once. In the centuries that followed, Petra did not disappear so much as it faded. Small communities likely continued to live among the ruins for generations, farming what land remained usable and occasionally repurposing older structures. But the grand trading capital of the Nabataeans slipped slowly out of regional memory among distant societies, becoming a place known mainly to local Bedouin communities who continued to live in and around the canyon, using some of the ancient tombs as shelter. To the wider world beyond the region, Petra became something closer to legend, a rumored lost city hidden somewhere in the deserts east of the Jordan River, mentioned in old texts but unvisited by European travelers for hundreds of years. That changed in the year 1812, when a Swiss explorer traveling in disguise as a Muslim pilgrim, having learned Arabic and studied Islamic customs to move safely through the region, convinced a local guide to lead him through the narrow canyon on the promise that he wished to make a sacrifice at a nearby shrine. What he found waiting at the end of that gorge stunned him. An entire city carved into rose-colored stone, its facades remarkably preserved by the dry desert climate and the very cliffs that had sheltered them from centuries of weather. His account, published soon after, reintroduced Petra to the Western world, though serious archaeological study did not begin in earnest until the 20th century. What archaeologists have found since has been extraordinary. Intact cisterns still capable of holding water after nearly 2,000 years, painted ceiling fragments preserving their original color, coins, pottery, and everyday tools that reveal a functioning, prosperous urban economy rather than a simple desert outpost. It is worth pausing here briefly to remember what these carved facades actually represent. Every tomb cut into this rock once held someone's parent, sibling, or child. Every doorway once opened onto a home filled with ordinary conversation, cooking smells, and the sound of children playing in the street outside. Petra is not only a monument, it is the remnant of thousands of individual lives, lived in full, in a place they believed would last. If you visit Petra today, you still enter the same way that Boy and his camels did nearly 2,000 years ago, through a narrow, winding gorge known as the Sick, its walls rising up to 80 meters on either side, the sky reduced to a thin ribbon of light far overhead. At the end of that passage, the great tomb facade still stands, its rose-colored stone catching the morning sun exactly as it did in antiquity, now one of the most photographed structures on Earth and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The colonnaded street survives in fragments, its column base is still visible along the ancient route, while nearby temple ruins have been partially excavated and stabilized for visitors to walk through. The rock-cut theater remains remarkably intact, its curved rows of seating still climbing up the cliffside, silent now except for the footsteps of tourists. The palace tomb and its neighboring elite facades still tower over the valley, weathered but unmistakably grand, their interior chambers empty but accessible to those willing to climb up to them. Modern water engineers have studied the ancient Nabataean channels and cisterns with genuine admiration, and portions of that original system have even been restored to demonstrate how effectively this desert city once managed one of its most precious resources. Local Bedouin communities still live near the site today, and many work as guides, sharing stories passed down across generations about a city their ancestors called home long after its trading wealth had faded. Thank you so much for spending this time with me exploring Petra, a city that turned water and incense into one of the ancient world's great fortunes, only to be swallowed by earthquakes, shifting trade, and time itself, before being found again. If you enjoyed walking through these canyons with me, let me know in the comments which lost city or vanished civilization you would like to see brought back to life next. Your suggestions genuinely shape what we cover here, so do not be shy about leaving them below. And if you have thoughts on how to make these journeys even more immersive, I would love to hear that too. See you in the next one.